Hi, it's me, Dorothy, and you're back with Trials and Tribulation equals my testimony, the vent. And today's topic is going to be about something that we all heard and know because we are, which is called a human species. Now, to understand a human species, to understand the elements of human and species, which combined together makes one, and I think as human beings, that is our primary goal, is to merge the two into one. Meaning, human elements of reasoning and species element of reacting. And at times we don't understand this, but we don't understand how that connects with spirituality because it's parallel to spirituality. In order for a person to be human, a person has to utilize reasoning, which becomes the professional element of a person. To understand how to sit up, to understand to be able to think things clearly, or to be a problem solver, or to be understanding, or just all these different elements to where reasoning can come into play. And the species element is more like just the reacting to something that has been done, reacting to something that has been said, whatever it may be, is just more of reacting. And people don't understand how sometimes they shift over gears with being human or being species or being human, even though they are an element of both. And we're going to connect that to the spiritual elements. Woo, woo, woo. My favorite topic, right? But with the spiritual elements being when one is connected to their angelic nature, they are being able to be a human more. It's the mind kind of connected to the brain, but allowing the brain to allow that to pretty much control the vessel. And so when you are a human, you are able to be understanding. You're able to be liked in the nature of yourself because you're able to see things clearly and see things through. Whereas when you are demonic in your natures, you become a species and you just react to things that's around you. Life throw this at you, you react to it. People do this to you, you react to it, to where you're not thinking clearly. And when you're in situations where you have got caught up on being reactive, hold on y'all, sorry. When you are being reactive and demonic, the human nature has to deal with the consequences because you calm down. And the truth about being a human species is just kind of understanding how to balance the two. Because even with people, if you want to break a person down from feeling human or being a human being, you break down the human nature of them. You break it down to a point where you make them reactive. You make them just react, respond. They're not thinking, they're not understanding, they're not reasoning to comprehend the bigger picture. You've pretty much put a veil over their eyes and made them just act crazy. I don't know if you ever had a chicken. I remember back in Haiti when they used to cut the chicken's neck. And if it wasn't cut all the way and it was kind of hanging off, you see the chicken or whatever just flapping its wing, moving around, but the neck is off. But again, you know, if that was metaphorically depicting human beings, if you cut our neck off, we still move, but we're not thinking, you know, it's not connecting to be able to reason, so then we react. And a lot of times, a lot of people who end up in trouble is because they were thinking through a species mindset versus the human element. And that's where the cutoff happens. You have to understand that the human and the species are one element. That's why it's called human species. And we get so distracted by specifics of life and people and words and society and just everything that we forget the bigger picture, the simplistic element of the balance of the two, to be able to where they connect into one human species. And a lot of times as humans, we are broken from that element when we endure trauma. Because once you endure trauma in that nature, you start to cut off the full elements of emotions because there has been some defects in natures of how you're supposed to react to things because of what you were taught or what was done to you or how you hurt, but you never got it out. You never healed through it. So that human element of healing you didn't provide, to where it was like the darkness came and said, oh, let's take that part and let's make you into a species. Let's make you reactive. You know, if you a species, you ain't going to think about what to do that is more in a sense of in alignment of right. You're going to go in a sense of what's in alignment of bad or negative, especially when you add drugs and alcohol to those things, because that just closes you down more. And even with the brain and the mind, if we think about those elements of the brain being flesh and the mind being spirit, it's like when you do drugs or drinking or whatever it may be, you numb down the element of the brain, but everything is connected to emotions. Brain, emotions, experience, you know, mind, spirit, emotions that can still connect to experiences if you have not given power to the mind and have utilized your brain your whole life and barely, you know, utilized the mind element. And those two things also connects to the human and species, but also not in a sense of just species, because there is a positive element to species, you know, and that's pretty much in words in America would be more like an angelic, you know, angelic in that nature, because it's species, but it's spiritual, but species more of negativity and darkness of how a person reacts because of pain or because of the bondage of the pain that they haven't freed themselves of because they have too much pride. You know, sometimes we go through pain and, you know, we got pride, but pride is a substitution of fear when you have gone through it so long that you got older and you're like, hold on, I don't want to be fearful no more. Now I'm prideful. Now when anything reminds me of something I've been through, I'm stepping up to it, you know, and that pride stops the healing because it distracts you from the reason behind the brokenness. And that's why a lot of times, if you talk to people who've been incarcerated or things of that nature, a lot of them that I know about were drugs or did something, and they were acting from a more species mindset than a human mindset. And not for everybody, because there's been people who were humans that were treated like they were a species and convicted with species crime when they were like, no, I was thinking clearly. I didn't step into that element. I didn't even put myself in those situations. I conduct myself a certain way because I'm aware of the obstacles I'm a face in life. But still, by doing right, I was prosecuted by being a species and doing a species thing of reacting when that was someone else and their trauma and their darkness that committed that crime, but they got away with it. So now you're caught with that that title. But going back to this human species element, as human beings, we are human species, and we have to understand that we cannot get too distracted by all the specifics, because the specifics kind of deviates us from the plan and the alignment to be able to conduct what's needed to be conducted when the mind was even connected with the brain. You know, like when you come into this world, like there was a process, there was a reason for you being here. And when we got caught up in life and got caught up in society, especially for those living out here in America, we got caught up in society and we got caught up in visuals and we got caught up in what's on paper, and we got, again, going down to visuals, because the visuals is what read what's on paper, but we got caught up into that to where we don't understand our own element of what this human species vessels is supposed to conduct on this platform, because it's not a long time to be here. You know, we're here for how many years we are given that we are blessed to have, and during those time frames we kind of had to stop being all up in ourselves and being all up in this. Oh my God, this thing right here is just like a mind control. Like, it's just, I can't get it out my face, and lost up in other people's business, and lost up in conducting business, and lost up in not what human species are supposed to truly enjoy. That's why for those who are getting so caught up in things that are not for them to be connected or for them to be balanced as a human species in between this physical and spiritual element, because we are. This right here can be our heaven and hell. Right here in the same spot, I could be standing next to someone who's going through hell while I'm going through heaven, and I could be standing next to them, because right here, this brain-mind balancement that we need to conduct, because even as a species, You can still be angelic. You can still be light-hearted, and you can feel like, oh, well, this element of me within my fiber makes me yearn to do righteous in this world, and it makes me yearn to empower people, or the spirit or species within me makes me want to devour people and break them down and control them and utilize them for my own selfish benefit. I mean, there's any way that can be utilized. And that's why, as a human species, sometimes you have to cut off. That's why, being in nature, I feel like a human species. I am not a social security number. I am not a birth certificate. I am not none of these things. I am just a human species engulfed in the beauty of nature, and being as I am, to be freely, to absorb all the elements around me and to appreciate all the elements around me, and to just be one with nature, which reminds me, if you add buildings and street lights and street signs and all these elements, isn't that the end goal? Is to be connected. Even with the distractions in front of us, is to be connected. So as a human species, you have to understand, who are you? Which goes back into understanding your history of your mother, your father, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, understanding those elements, understand the truth of how you came into the world, why. Like, for example, at the age of 27, I learned that my mother and father was an arranged marriage. I didn't know that. I learned that my father married my mother to make up for the past hurt he had pretty much put on his father, because my father adored my mother, and he felt by marrying her he can make up for that. So that's part of my element of being in this world as a human species. I was a makeup for someone else, but I have to also learn to make up for myself, for my past pain, for my past sorrows, for my cries that I've cried, or for my laughters and my joys and my accomplishments and everything in between, coming and engulfed into one. My negativity and my positivity becoming one. No separations, being aligned with this element of being in flesh but connecting to a higher source. It's just understanding that as a human species, you have to understand you. Just like you would analyze another species, human species, you gotta understand yourself. You understand the things that you go for, what triggers you, what makes you happy, what is your pet peeves, what inspires you. Understand these elements, because that is what makes you that human species, that unique individual. And if you don't understand this, you might deal with another human species that's not in alignment to you, and then it's just kind of not connecting. It's not connecting. And you need to understand this, so that way you know how to pretty much put yourself around elements that's in alignment to you as a human species. So I just want to make it short, because as you know, this is the vent. Nothing is written down. I'm just going off the top of my head. But you just have to understand, as a human species, your goal is to understand you as a human species, because the brain controls this element, of course, with the connection of the spine. But the mind is more powerful than the brain, which is more powerful when you learn to connect the two and allow them to come together. So as a human species, learn the elements of yourself. Learn the elements of allowing the mind to control you, this higher power, this wisdom. I'm telling you, it's like wisdom beyond your own experience that comes through you, through the brain that processes it. There's times where I'll say something out my mouth and I'll be like, and I'm like, wait. And I'm actually speaking to myself. The mind sent the brain a message to where the brain sent the mouth to repeat it so I can catch it and retain it back into the brain. But again, hey, that's me as a human species, learning to understand me as a human species. My angel, my darkness, bringing them together, allowing the angel to direct the darkness, allowing the brain to be controlled by the mind. And then, as a human species, blossoming and evolving and being part of the evolution of human species, and to help guide the human species as others, human species, are guiding people to understand the true element of self. So till next time, au revoir.